Okay, this video is going to be on the 24 volt starter mod for the KTM Freeride. This is for the 250s, the two strokes. This is a 2016. It had the supposedly upgraded 410 watt starter, the better Bendix and all those things, and none of them really seem to matter. I've owned this thing for 25 hours. It's got 65 on it total now, and it's an amazing bike. But that was one of the biggest frustrations I ever had with this thing. When it's warm, it would start amazing. Cold, it would, do one revolution, load up against compression. This engine's never been apart. It's not like it's a high compression bike. And then the Bendix would kick off, or it would just, the starter would just stall. It never had enough oomph to get through it. And of course, last week I read another post on Facebook on one of the forums where people are wondering, why won't my Freeride start? And everybody's like, well, check your jets, check your Bendix, it might be slipping. And none of those things really are what I found to be the problem. I literally did every suggestion you can do to a Freeride before I got to this point. I got the XRC bushings from New Zealand. My Bendix has been checked. It's perfect. The starter, I bought another one finally. I rebuilt mine. KTM parts, made no difference. Timed it, ran the extra ground down, ran thicker wire, jumper cables everywhere. Nothing ever made a difference. I even got the Molykote 33, the special lubricant they mention in the service manual. None of it made a difference. So the only thing I really didn't do would be the Slavin's wet mod. I don't really see the point of that after I got this far. So what was on the bike now when I decided to go here is a $30-something Rocky Mountain ATV Chinese starter for the XC. I just thought, try something different. It's not a well-built starter, nothing like the KTM one. It has bushings instead of bearings. The brushes, it's $30, right? KTM one, I think up here in Canada, is over 300. So I thought I'd try it, and it actually worked. It spun the engine just as fast. And when I went to the 24 volt mod, I actually put that back on just to see, because I didn't know what double the voltage is going to do to a starter. The bike also has electron carburetor, which got rid of any of the jetting ideas that people were coming up with a plug pilot valve. So the bike hasn't run today. It's about 15 degrees, and I'm going to hold in the kill switch, and I'll crank it and just show you how fast it cranks. And then I'll let it start, and you'll be able to hear the difference. It actually starts right. So you can hear how fast it cranks. It's staggering. Really simple mod to do. Doubles the voltage. And the amazing thing is, I had actually got to the point where I had mounted a battery up here. The one down in front of the swing arm to me is just in a stupid spot. I was always needing to put a jumper on it to give it some more power, just to get the bloody thing to go. I would get somewhere and it would just never, it just wouldn't fire. It would just load up, it would kick, and eventually it would go. And everybody was like, oh, lithium batteries, they're cold. Well, no, not after 10 minutes of trying this. They're no longer cold. I would do what Slavin says, wait 30 seconds, try it again, try it again. So I had mounted a battery under here, took the one out from down by the swing arm, the stock one, and then I decided to put it back in and try them in parallel. And parallel still gives you 12 volts and doubles the amperage. So I'm like, great, 250 watt out, whatever they want to rate these things in, that should be awesome. It was better, still the same problem. It just gave me more time of cranking before the battery would go dead. But inevitably, I would get somewhere if the bike's cold, didn't want to start, didn't want to crank over fast enough. So, to do the mod, this has been covered online, just never for the Freeride. I figure I'll throw it out there just for that. It's off the 250 and 300 XCs, the KTM two-strokes, I want to say 14 or 15. Later on, they changed it, put the starter inside the engine. Those things started off with a Kickstarter. And if anybody's read up on this far enough to find this video, you'll know they just decided, well, let's tack on a starter. We'll make this better. So they literally just changed the side cover, bolted this starter on, did the stupid Bendix thing, and it's horrible. So the way to do this mod, if you're nervous about actually doing it and you want to see if it makes a difference on how your bike starts, you don't need to do anything permanent. You can just run a jumper if you have a second battery, and you can give it a try first. So this little hole under the seat had this little box in it earlier, and there's 2 screws. You pull out the solenoid and whatever else is in the way. There's a little relay in there. Remove that, and it gave me enough room to put in this battery, and I'll tell you which one it is later on. And it fits in there absolutely perfectly. Like, it snaps under this little tabs, and you literally have to kind of push it in, and it sits there. There's still room for the solenoid, and there's a little relay tucked down in there. And it's very neat, very clean. Holds my tender cables. So the way to do this mod, if you want to just try it, set the battery here. You'll just need a longer jumper cable. Ground and the power off your main battery, your standard battery, are the same. The cable runs up here. This is the positive. It hooks to the solenoid. You disconnect the other one from the solenoid. That's the one that leads to the starter. It's the starter cable. You disconnect it from there, and you bolt it to the positive terminal of the auxiliary battery, the new battery you're putting in. From the output of the solenoid, where that battery or that cable was removed, you just run a cable to, it's got to be the right, solid enough gauge. It's carrying a lot of amps when it's cranking. And you run it over to the negative of the auxiliary battery. So the power is going to come out of the standard battery, up the cable to the solenoid. When you hit go, it comes out there through the negative of the other one, out the positive, and that's the starter cable that runs to the starter. So you've just added 12 volts to the system after the solenoid. And the beauty of this, I couldn't come up with a way to do it myself until I Googled this. I was thinking capacitors, what do you do? Because the system, the stator, the regulator rectifier, can only charge for 12 volts. So what this does is the regular part of the system up to here still powers your lights when you're running. The stator charges it. It's absolutely normal. But when you hit the starter button and you close this little electromagnetic contact in the solenoid, that power, instead of going right to the starter, goes through another 12 volts. That gives you 24 volts because it's in series down to your starter. It's bloody amazing. The system, other than when you hit the go button, charges, works fine. This battery, your auxiliary battery, doesn't charge though. Once it's running, once the solenoid button, your starter button is released, this battery just sits here. It doesn't do anything until you hit that button again. I went out on a good ride the other day. I bet you I started this bike 50 times and it was fine. It starts in one revolution. Like, it's absolutely staggering. Came home, hooked on my Optimate charger, and I bet you this battery was charged up in 5 minutes. It really didn't take anything. It's an amazing setup. It works really well. I don't know about the longevity of the starter. I've had it on for maybe 5 hours, and I've done hundreds of starts so far, and this is still the cheap Rocky Mountain starter. No issue. I mean, in my logic, it can't hurt the starter more than endless cranking and loading up and back kicks, like, it just, to me, this is a no-brainer to do, just because it's way less wear and tear overall on the starter. It's maybe, I think the only thing I could see it really hurting would be the Bendix, because it hits so hard. There's little dogs in there that are engaging, and I could see it hurting the Bendix. I mean, maybe for a I think 14, before they welded them, if your bike has a non-welded, just the press fit Bendix that they talked about, I could definitely see ripping one of those apart. And I think for next summer, I will probably just carry a spare Bendix with me on the trail. and easy enough to swap. Geez, you just need a 8mm wrench. I'm just going to pause this and gather my thoughts and see if there's anything else I'm missing. Okay, so I can't really come up with anything else that I missed. I can maybe mention how the tenders are hooked up. This is the auxiliary one for this battery, the one that's used just for the starter circuit. That hooks in standard, negative, positive to the tender. For the main battery, my bike has it's got a bloody parasitic draw that I cannot figure out. I've gone through everything. It's got to be something, either there's nothing, I don't know. Anyway, I just keep it on a tender all the time. No big deal. This one, I just hooked it to where the input is on the stator, and then the ground to the stator solenoid, and then to the ground is just to the frame, rather than running it all the way down to the belly. And then I trimmed up the wires so everything fits. So these fit under there quite nicely. And this little rubber flap, that's not my idea either. That's an old inner tube, and it's just I used that shoe goo and glued it to the fuel tank down below where the water would drain back out of this, and it just keeps, I do a lot of water crossings, the water from feeding right into the air filter. And it covers the electronics a little bit when it's done. I hope it never gets that deep or we're done. So for batteries, I live in Canada. We don't have a huge supply of stuff, and this is during COVID. So I got new ones from Royal Distributing, but you guys can see the part numbers on these. I'll zoom in, and you can know which ones to look for. This is the stock battery. I put a new one in for that. I found this one is exactly the size. There's the part number, and if you can't find this brand of battery, you can probably just Google up the dimensions online, and that is exactly what fits in the bottom. And you can see it's bigger, just in thickness, same height as the one I wound up putting up top. And this is the one I found up top. It weighs exactly 1 pound. And to add 1 pound to get your bike to start, I thought was a pretty low trade-off. I'm all about lightweight, but this was a lifesaver. You could probably get one of these to fit underneath there if you took a heat gun and changed the shape of the bottom of the box. But if you can find this one or one similar dimensions, there's the part number, you'll be good to go. Amazing, amazing batteries. And now before I go, I might as well just show you some neat things about the Freeride that I've done over my experimenting times. I just did this the other day. There's the fuel markings. That's 1 liter, 2 liters. Reserve kicks in just below 2. It's right behind this bar. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Easy. I threw this on for the last ride we did. It's an old handguard, like a Timber Tamer bark buster, just an aluminum one. Needed a little bit of mill work, but I got it to bolt over where the skid plate goes, up to where this fairing bolts to. It's just a fairing bolt. Ran it through from the back side, so it pinches through the threaded part to here, and then that nut just holds on the fairing. That's just so it's easier to take that off out there without having to undo the whole thing. Electron carb, amazing. Remote choke works well. It's a really long one. I got this, the other one broke, and it actually reaches out beyond now, finally. So that's good. Front brakes sucked on it when I got it. Steel pistons, stainless pistons from Nilo. Worked great. It still wasn't good enough for me. So this is a floating disc. I got it off KTM Power Parts. It's for this bike, and it's like 120 Canadian, and it's actually made by Galfer. It's laser etched right into it. Made all the difference. You know, you have to center, these are radial mounted calipers. You have to center it for a normal one, but if these pistons push unevenly, it's trying to bend the disc. This allows the disc to flex. Huge difference. Absolutely huge. Back end, of course, the other complaint everybody has, I was always losing pressure on the rear caliper. It was awful. And then you have to back bleed it by putting suction up here. It was the only way to get the standard Formula 1 to work. So this is the EXC full-size Brembo conversion. I got it off of a late model EXC 450. So it came off of about I want to say about an 08 or up. EXC, 450, 500, they're all the same. I actually managed to get the carrier to work. I have a mill, and I had to shave about 1 millimeter off this side and put a spacer on the back side, and that little slidey part on the other side of the swing arm wouldn't reach through, but I just ran a mill groove down the back side, so I didn't even have to buy a new carrier. So now it's centered. You can actually go to a 1 centimeter bigger disc. MotoMaster makes it, but there's lots of surface coverage and there's more back brake than I ever need. I didn't even need to change the brake line. I just routed out a little earlier from there, and then it hooks around by changing the banjo point. And the only other thing I've really done that's worthy of note is the Clake One Light clutch. This thing I found had a really heavy clutch. I tried lighter springs, less springs, you name it, and nothing made it like this. It really is a one-finger clutch. You can adjust it up in here. There's a little screw you can turn in and out, make it lighter, just preloads a spring, and I've got it that it's nothing. Like, the initial breakaway is a bit of pull. Now in here, it's absolutely zero. People that ride it complain they don't know where the engagement point is, but you know, that's just something you learn. You don't feel it on this thing. It's kind of weird. It's numb. There's a little pressure when it moves, but to hold it. But it's, yeah, all day you can ride around with your finger on the clutch. Expensive, but well worth it. So that's the 24 volt mod. I hope it helps you people. Anybody wants to do it, give it a try. And I just remembered something I might try in the future. It cranks so fast. As I said, I could see it ripping the Bendix apart. What you could actually do is radio control airplanes or whatever, cars. They use LiPo batteries, and they come in these nice little packs, and they have different voltages. They have, you know, them in 6, 7, 2, 8, 4. You can also buy the individual cells. If you're handy, you could solder them together, make up your own little pack, and add whatever you need to add. This is irrelevant how many volts it is. It's just adding to the 12 you have. Like 6 more volts, you throw 18 at it, it might be a more normal starter. Right now, it sounds like, you know, a rabbit on meth. It cranks so fast. You know, if you have the ability or whatever, experiment. If you're worried about having too many volts hitting your starter or the Bendix, try something small. Add 4 volts, 6 volts, 8, and see what makes you happy, or try it. Anyway, again, highly recommended mod from me, and I hope it helps people out, and I thank you for watching. Take care.